Hopefully, you don't have a case of the Mondays, but I'd imagine when it's a Monday Night Football Monday in Pittsburgh, you probably do not. Once again, another fall weekend here in the Steel City. This is Mic'd Up, presented by Pittsburgh Sports Live, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now, and all throughout the Now family of networks. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am joined, as always, by Mike Vukovcan. We are going to touch on the current situation around the National Football League. There was a day of games without the Pittsburgh Steelers playing, but a day of games that a lot of teams that thought they were contenders certainly potentially have been now exposed as fool's gold. It makes the Steelers division wide open. It makes the league wide open, and also puts the Steelers and other teams on notice for future games that you could be plucked off too when you least expect it. We also will touch on the current situation around the college football scene with the college football playoff rankings set to be updated, to say the very least, with some teams very highly ranked losing this past weekend. And obviously, that's going to change things. And then even a news story here before we close things that will affect Pitt basketball. So, Mike, the Steelers didn't play on Sunday, had a Sunday free. It was kind of nice. Games were on, though. The Ravens didn't look nearly as good as maybe some people thought. The Bills losing to Jacksonville really had a bad day. That's the worst Bills outing since Josh Allen's been quarterback in years. Bengals blown out by the Browns, who many thought the Browns were going to just kind of nosedive into having their season go in the tubes after the Odell Beckham Jr. drama and then losing to the Steelers. They actually put up their best performance of the season, really, even though Baker only had to throw and complete 14 passes. They win. The Bengals now lose back-to-back after they were a sexy pick for some, losing this game and then also losing to the Jets 2 weeks ago. Other teams also having poor days, and that even goes to the Rams, who are many Super Bowl favorites, losing to a Titan team without Derrick Henry. And we talked about how big of a deal that would be for Tennessee. It didn't seem to be that much of an issue in that game against the NFL's best. What are your thoughts now? How much did this weird day change things for you? And are there some teams that you thought were contenders that now you're thinking, I don't know, maybe it's just fully wide open? Not many elite teams really around the NFL, maybe just Tampa, and they've certainly been vulnerable this year too.
Yeah, in our last show, I said that. I said the fact that the Derrick Henry injury, I thought completely opened the AFC for the Steelers to, if they get their stuff together here, it wouldn't shock me at all if, they have a little playoff run. And I still, after what happened yesterday, that just reconfirmed that to me. Titans effort, the two efforts yesterday that really impressed me and in some ways surprised me a little bit were the Titans and the Arizona Cardinals. Not having Murray, not having Hopkins, not having Watt, not having AJ Green.
Yeah, James Conner did it again.
And they just went out and ran over the 49ers on the road. That's a very impressive win for Arizona. And the Titans, Mike Vrabel's just a good coach, man.
Seems like it.
If it ever comes to that day, if I'm starting an NFL franchise and I'm looking for a head coach, aside from Mike Tomlin, if I had another pick, I tell you what, Mike Vrabel will be very high on that list. He just seems to, he just has a good team.
He does, and it's rare for a Belichick disciple to have this success as a head coach. That hasn't really happened, and some maybe were in doubt on Vrabel even a year or so ago. But for what he has to deal with, sure.
He has so many injuries.
But now there's weapons there.
And they went into LA, who had no issues at all, and they completely shut down that LA offense.
Right.
And without Derrick Henry, that's okay. We'll throw it. We'll play defense. We'll score defensive touchdowns. We'll do whatever we have to win. That's a good team. I'm going to move them up ahead of the Ravens. I think they're the team to beat right now in the AFC.
Okay.
Other things, real quick. Very surprised with the Bengals, how pathetic they looked. They just appear to be one of those teams that will look good 1 week, look good 2 weeks, and then they'll kill you next week. So that shows me they don't have the consistency. The Bills, I continue to say this. There's something about that team that I just don't think is there yet. I think they need to add a big-time running back. And I just don't know that they have weapons aside from Stephon Diggs. I think they have a defense. I think obviously they have a quarterback.
Yeah.
They're still missing something. And the game of the day yesterday is going to be a little bit of a weird take. Kansas City won over Green Bay.
Right, without Rodgers.
But
right.
If I'm looking at that objectively,
yeah,
I'm feeling better about Green Bay than I would with Kansas City.
Overall, as a team, I do agree. I think the only concern you have if you're Green Bay, and my friends were texting me who are Packers fans immediately, is it's very evident now, and this might be more annoying with the positioning and clearly the value that he now has. Green Bay can be a contender with Aaron Rodgers. Without Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay is not really a contender. So now you're on the beck and call of Aaron Rodgers to whether or not he's going to have COVID, whether or not he's going to get vaccinated, what he's going to say in the Pat McAfee podcast, if he's going to wear a mask at the facility or not, because there are rules. You're kind of in a little bit of a vulnerability to what he wants to do, and he's a little bit of a loose cannon. But yeah, with him.
I'm just looking at the team right now and saying that they played Kansas City in Kansas City with a guy that's making his first start in 2 years.
Yeah, Jordan Love, right.
And they only lost by 6 points to that team. Their defense, once again, Kansas City, I have no idea. I don't follow them closely enough to really know what their problem is. But the fact that they continue to struggle scoring points and they don't really have any injuries on offense, that would worry me. Green Bay was there. Green Bay was right there. And they took on a Kansas City team and, came down to the fourth quarter. I'm feeling good if I'm a Green Bay fan. And as far as the Jordan Love thing goes, I know I'm already reading it. He's a bust. He's a bum,
right?
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. The guy's making his first start against Kansas City,
right,
in Kansas City.
Right.
I think he deserves a little bit more time. I'm thinking that if Jordan Love is able to play a few games, not that they want this, but if it comes to that next year, if he's able to play a few games with this offense, he's going to do better than he did yesterday.
Well, maybe he'll be playing all the games if they do trade Aaron Rodgers. Who knows what that future will hold? Jordan Love went 19 for 34 for 190, a TD, a pick, and a quarterback rating of just under 70. Not the best day, but as you mentioned, his first start, in the midst of drama, in the midst of pressure, he's on a contending team. Nobody wanted him out there in terms of the fan base. So, yeah, I think he did certainly okay. My concern, actually, though, and my only counterpoint to, the Packers played well overall without Aaron Rodgers, but if they don't have Rodgers, they're not really a contender. Other things moved for them, and they did play well defensively. The argument and the counterpoint would be they played well defensively, but so did the Giants against the Chiefs. So did other teams against the Chiefs, despite Patrick Mahomes being an MVP candidate every year and looking like he's building a Hall of Fame resume, and the Chiefs offense being so explosive the last few years. This Chiefs team has just not been good this year. They have struggled to score effectively. Their defense has not been good. They actually played well in this game, so maybe that's Jordan Love. And maybe the Packers looked okay defensively because the Chiefs offense has just been sucking. I don't think the Giants are good still, despite their recent win, and the Chiefs really struggled to beat them. So there's something going on with this Chiefs team, despite winning games. Even with winning back-to-back games, they don't look good. So
that's why
there's something wrong.
That's why I said if I'm a Green Bay fan, I'm feeling better today than if I were a Kansas City Chiefs fan. They won. Right. There's something going on in Kansas City right now that it's not the same vibe as they've had the last few years.
No. In comparison, I probably would agree with you, but I do think if I'm a Packer fan, I'm not too excited because I do realize that the Chiefs are maybe just fool's gold this year. As weird as that sounds,
but this continued their defensive play all year. This isn't just Green Bay's been a good defensive team all year, and that my point is that string continued with them.
Right.
They continue to play good defense, and if they have a kicker, Mason Crosby, that misses 2 40-yard field goals,
right?
That's a tie game. Mason Crosby, it's obviously he's at the end of his career,
right?
But
normally
you're expecting a guy like that to hit 40-yard field goals. That would have been 6 points. You have a 13-13 game. So,
No, absolutely. It's hard not to look at the Ravens. Jacksonville beating Buffalo. Even with Buffalo struggling, I didn't think they would lose that game. That's the upset of the year right now. And despite me still liking Joe Burrow, the Bengals didn't look good against the Browns, and that's now back-to-back weeks. The Bengals have not looked good. We'll see if the Browns can continue this because, again, 41 points despite only 14 pass completions for Baker Mayfield. But the Bengals got to be better. So it does feel like wide open for the Steelers. Right. That division is made up of really average teams. Anybody can beat anybody, but anybody can lose to anybody. It is wide open. The Steelers need to take care of business, including Monday Night Football against the Bears, who they are heavily favored to beat. They have a young quarterback there as well. Usually the Steelers defense feasts against teams like that. I don't think they're going to lose, but who knows based on what we've seen around the NFL. Mic'd up here, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti. I do want to ask you now, as we move along here, you released your college football playoff rankings to where you would have things now. And obviously that had to come with some adaptations from where they were last week because some teams like Michigan State, who was undefeated, suffered a loss. Different things went around in the college football landscape. Bama didn't look that great. Oklahoma was off, so that certainly can hurt teams at times, despite still being undefeated. I got to ask you, because when I looked at the rankings, the one thing that stands out to me on your rankings, and I really don't disagree, I think I would have had very similar rankings, unfortunately, to have boring radio here, is just you still having Cincinnati in that 5 spot. Yes, they're undefeated. Yeah, they have the top 10 win, which I'm imagining is certainly part of it because we did discuss that. That's different than UCF. But while Oklahoma was off, and you do have Cincinnati ahead of Oklahoma, and you do have them just out of the top 4 behind Oregon, Bama, Georgia, etc. How did Cincinnati get there for you? Because while a lot has happened around the landscape, and maybe it was just Michigan State losing had to bump them out, but Cincinnati has still not looked good now for 3 straight weeks. They actually had an 8-point win, so single-digit victory over Tulsa. Yes, game day was there, but was that maybe your biggest struggle? What else maybe did you notice what else can you explain out of your rankings? That was just my surprise that I saw Cincy at 5 since they haven't looked good recently.
Yeah, I just put Cincy over. I'm going to give them the probably not going to remain there long, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of them getting a road win over Notre Dame, which
that's the best 10. Win between Oklahoma
and that's better than any win. Oklahoma doesn't have any signature win.
You're right.
They've just played. They've played who they've played. They've struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season.
They will have to get one to stay undefeated though, because Oklahoma State looks real good.
Right, that's what I mean. They could move up. They probably will move up. They struggled to beat lucky game over Texas. They probably shouldn't have won, but that was it. The rest of I wasn't sure where to drop Michigan State, but I had to put them ahead of Michigan because they won.
Right.
Other than that, everything is Oregon.
Any pause for you, or was Ohio State in there just because they keep on winning? They do have a loss, and they actually haven't really been looking that good recently either. They barely beat Nebraska, who is not.
Their loss though was to number 3
right.
Oregon.
100%.
So that's why I have that. I still have. I look at who you lose. The way I look at things is I look at who you lose to and where it's at, and that's why I didn't bump Michigan down as much because they lost to a team that's ahead of them.
Right.
I don't. Unlike some of the pollsters, I don't penalize you that much if you're losing to a team ahead of you because they're supposed to be better than you.
They're favored. You're the underdog.
In the game, right? So I'm not gonna bury you for that because that's not what I'm gonna drop you down a little bit, but I'm not gonna. And then some of these other teams I dropped out. The hardest thing for these pollsters, for the voters, I have no idea how they're going to do this. Is when they're going to try to come up with 15 through 25. That's just pick a name out of a hat.
Yeah, and you do have Pitt at 18.
I have Pitt at 18 just because I think Tennessee, the Tennessee win, they won again this week over Kentucky, which was a team that was in the top 15, I believe, or top 20. That win's starting to look a little bit better. They did beat Clemson. I know what everyone's going to say, but they have a few name wins, and that's why I'm gonna put them up there. The rest of these teams, I look at teams that who they play, and Kentucky's now lost 2 in a row. I dropped Mississippi State out because they have 4 losses. You have 4 losses, you shouldn't be in the top.
You got Penn State back in there. They do.
I put them in there because they lost 3 in a row. I put that ahead of Iowa because I'm gonna do the eye test. and I know you can't prove this, but this is just one person's opinion. They were going to beat Iowa with Sean Clifford.
I was going to say, because it contradicts your head-to-head, but they didn't have their quarterback.
They were going to beat them, and he wasn't healthy. That played into the other game. So I think they're a better team. I would wager a lot of money that Penn State's record wouldn't be 6-3 if Sean Clifford wasn't injured. So that's what when you're down that low, it really doesn't matter. But it was fun to do. We'll find out Tuesday night. It's a big thing for Pitt. If they're able to crack in the top 20, and that makes Thursday night's game against North Carolina that more, important.
I would definitely say that's an understatement. Yeah, Pitt still has a lot in front of them. They did look sluggish early on against Duke, but yeah, they turned it on. They did what they had to do. That will certainly be a big game. And speaking of North Carolina, we didn't mention, but that also bumped Wake Forest out of being in the situation where they could vie for the playoff legitimately. They then suffer a loss to North Carolina, who's already lost a bunch of games, but they can really score points. This is one team that Pitt will have to deal with that can score. This could be a 50-49 shootout, which might be entertaining, but give a lot of fans heart attacks. They beat Wake Forest with 50 plus on the board, but they also allowed a lot of points, 50 plus. So yeah, 58-55, I think was the final. That was maybe the game of the year, really, something like that.
The over and under, I think is kind of weird to say, but I think it's 76 for that to.
I don't know. I mean, based on what we've seen from these teams,
I have no idea how they're going to score
at least 35 a game, and unless North Carolina doesn't show up, they should be as well. Although maybe it would be right around there at a minimum push, but based on what North Carolina just did, if Pitt wins, they're going to have it be 80 plus for combined, I'd imagine. So yeah, that's something to watch out for sure. But that does bump Wake out with that bad loss, regardless of what happens. So it does appear as we stand now, Mike, I think we can probably safely say the ACC is out of the playoff. Out of the major conferences, the Big 12 only having a chance because of Oklahoma, the Pac-12 only having a chance because of Oregon, who was able to make up for a bad loss to Stanford earlier in the year. Nobody can claim East Coast bias either, because Oregon had a bad loss and they are right in there in everyone's rankings. And that's, of course, because of the head-to-head win of Ohio State. But it is an advantage when you lose early in the year versus losing late in the year as well.
Yeah, and I said this. And I was trying to caution Pitt fans about this, is even if, and I still believe this, even if Wake Forest would have remained undefeated heading into the ACC championship game,
right?
They weren't going to.
I think the Western Michigan loss was going to hurt them. Yeah.
Yeah. I just find it a very hard time. Even if Wake Forest would have been undefeated heading into the championship game, I don't even know if Wake Forest would have ran the table if they would have been in the Final Four.
Probably it did not. It didn't appear based on the rankings, because when they were undefeated, they weren't near there. And if you look at, for example, Michigan State, prior to them losing to Purdue, when they were undefeated, they were number 3 in the country. When Wake Forest was undefeated, they were number 7 or 9. So yeah, the committee basically said, we believe the Big Ten to be a way better conference than you. Right. They had more depth. The SEC is a way better conference than you. That's why Bama's at 2, despite having lost a game to another SEC opponent. So the committee did make it clear to the ACC. Honestly, the committee kind of said the same thing to Oklahoma, but as we're mentioning, the difference for Wake Forest, if they would have run the table, they would have had their best win against Pitt, who's a very good team this year, but they wouldn't have been a top 5, top 10 victory for them. If Oklahoma, who right now they clearly wouldn't get there, but if they finish out the year with beating Oklahoma State, who just mopped the floor with West Virginia, Oklahoma State's going to really crawl up those rankings, I would imagine, and climb up there. That could be a top 4, top 5 Oklahoma State team. And Mike, one thing no one's mentioning here, as we'll close up the show here with some news here real quick, is think of this. Oklahoma State does have a loss, unlike Oklahoma. And everyone always thought if the Big 12 gets in there, it's only going to be Oklahoma. They then would pick up a big win over Oklahoma State. If some of these teams lose again, for example, if Oklahoma State runs the table and they beat Oklahoma multiple times, they have an outside shot at getting in the playoff as well. And they would have a very similar resume than a lot of these teams that are certainly right up there. This is, I will say this too, Mike, as much as Cincinnati has that top 10 win, This is the worst year for a group of 5 team to go undefeated, even with the top 10 win, because there is just too much going on. Yep. There's a log jam. And if the committee is faced with a 1-loss major conference champ who has a top 10 victory to end the year, as the people said in all these shows, as they said on game day, the one negative thing for Cincinnati, they have no more room to impress anyone. Oklahoma State can pick up a top 5 win. Oklahoma can pick up a top 5 win. Michigan State could turn it around if they beat Ohio State, if Ohio State gets that big victory, etc. No one's going to be impressed with these Cincy wins. Granted, they do have a top 10 one, and they got to win by double digits against these bad teams, not just single digits. So we'll see what happens.
They have no shot. They will not make. I don't
They're
care.
They're probably going to finish 5 or 6. I bet.
I don't care what they do. They'll make the group of 6, and they'll be one of those teams. This committee is not going to put them in over a 1-loss Power 5 team.
Yeah, especially when that 1 loss is to a top 5 team, like if it's Ohio State.
It's not going to happen.
They're not going to penalize Ohio State for losing to Oregon and winning the conference. Of course not. We do want to end it with this on a negative note here, but we also don't have much to talk about here. So this is just basically making it clear. Horton getting arrested over the weekend. Obviously, Pitt basketball has high hopes this year. And in addition to this now uncertainty, they had the injury to Nike Savandi in that exhibition game. So this puts Pitt basketball really in flux this year, certainly with a lot of question marks. What are your thoughts? We're going to get a lot more information. We're going to have a video from Jeff Capel's thoughts as well here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and PSN, and we'll have more to touch on that in coming days here on the show as well.
Yeah, I'm going to, in a situation like this, normally I don't have a filter on my mouth when I talk.
I do like that about you.
Yeah, yes. But I will have one at this time because I don't think anybody, we'll see what Jeff Capel says today. He's scheduled, but even before this, he's scheduled to meet with the media. Pitt opens up tomorrow against the Citadel. They released a real quick statement over the weekend and just said, we're going to refrain comment until all the facts are in. And that's what I'm going to do until I don't want to bury the kid, because I said I was at a baseball tournament over the weekend, and so I had some Pitt fans around me. And they said, what's going on with that? What do you got? I said, I will just say this to you. If you had to name me, if I had to rank 1 through 12, the kids on that team that would have gotten in trouble, Ithiel Horton would be either at the top or number 2 as far as kids that wouldn't get in trouble. He just would have been the last guy you would have picked. So I don't know what happened. It doesn't look good when it's involved with a cop, but it's also not good that he did it. It's on the south side. Not a lot of good things happen there.
They do not.
No, it doesn't good. So I don't know how Pitt's going to handle this, but they're already down a guard. Ithiel Horton, I find it hard to believe he'll play at least at the beginning, but I don't know. Maybe new facts will come out. This is not good. Another blow to Pitt and their guard rotation. It's going to be very challenging, to say the least, for Pitt at the beginning of the season. A lot of kids that probably didn't expect to be getting minutes. We're going to be getting minutes.
And then we'll see what the expectations are around Jeff Capel with this situation as well, with Nike Savandi also being injured, relied a lot around this year as well. And this isn't like Kobe Bryant or one of those scenarios. If you're in litigation, if you're going to court cases, Pitt's not going to play you an hour before and then let you go drive to the that's just going to look really, really bad. So if that ends up being the situation, that might be it, which would be
we'll find out when he talks
a sad
today,
situation.
Hopefully he gives more information, but if no information is there, reporters can ask Jeff Capel all he wants today. He's not gonna. There's nothing to say that he can say factually. It's gonna be boring, but he won't say anything. So we'll find out. I think it's sometime afternoon today. He's supposed to speak.
Yeah, and we'll give our thoughts later in the week as well. That'll do it for this edition of Mic'd Up. So get ready for some football on this Monday.